Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Defined Engagement BookCast. My name is Doug Fine, and I'm so glad to have you here today. Today, we're going to be speaking to author Paul Higdon. He's the founder of Little Boost Children's Fund. You'll hear more about that later. Paul's book is Hope and a Future: Life and Survival and Renewal on the Streets of an African Slum. After we talk to Paul about his book, we're going to talk to the subject of the book, John Maina, along with Paul. So thank you, Paul, for joining me on the Defined Engagement BookCast.
Hello, everybody. This is the Defined Engagement BookCast. My name is Doug Fine, and I'm the guy behind the BookCast, where we talk to interesting people. Most of them have written books. If it's not books, they're writing interesting things like music, organizational culture statements and things like that. So I get very interesting people on this. And this is my second bookcast with someone that's got a connection with the continent of Africa. Last time I talked to Teresa O'Kane, and she had a 10-month overland excursion in the continent of Africa. And I have Paul Higdon here. He is the author of Hope and a Future: Life, Survival, and Renewal on the Streets of an African Slum. Paul Higdon, welcome so much to the Defined Engagement BookCast. I'm glad to have you here.
Thanks an awful lot, Doug. I really appreciate you and your listeners taking the time to hear this story.
It's a great story. Why don't we jump in? Tell me what the basics of this story is. I've read it, of course, but I'd love for you to just go ahead and riff on what you did and who you know, and it'll all come out, right?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. If you'd indulge me a few minutes, I can frame up the book and some of the really remarkable things that occurred in my life that led me to write this.
Please.
First of all, just a real quick autobiographical note. I just retired a year and a half ago after 40 years in international finance.
Mm-hmm.
And half of that time I was an actual banker, and I actually spent a lot of time in Mexico City. I am actually part Mexican by bloodlines. And the second half of my career, I was essentially a professor of international finance and loved what I did. Mm-hmm. But sure as heck love being retired now.
Well, I see that smile on your face, man. That's undeniable that you made a good choice at the right time.
Thanks a lot, Doug. Well, look, let me just do this again. If you indulge me some time,
sure,
I can kind of summarize the book and dig into a few of the really moving aspects of the story. The story begins in 2001 when my wife, Linda, and I went to Kenya on a humanitarian field trip. Mm-hmm. We were looking at humanitarian projects, relief projects in Kenya and Tanzania, things like trade schools, water wells, orphanages, things of that sort. And the first day we arrived in Niurobe, the capital of Kenya, we were taken down into the slums, into one of the slums called Mathare. And we were there to visit an orphanage. Now, this is at the height of the AIDS pandemic. So there are just, God knows, countless numbers of children whose parents died. And so orphanages sprang up all over the place. This particular one is called Good Samaritan and is in one of the 5 largest slums of Africa. Estimates range anywhere from 300,000 to 500,000 people in this slum. And I just want to make a little quick note on the side. These urban slums, about which I wrote, are not curious little sideshows on earth. 1 in 8 or 1 in 9 of all of our fellow mortals live in these conditions.
My gosh.
And they are shocking conditions.
Yeah, when you say slum, it's such a derogatory word, just from our perspective as Americans. Do the Africans call them slums also?
They call them slums, but it's interesting. The American connotation of slums is more, it has a racial component to it.
Yeah.
particularly Black and Hispanic.
Yeah.
It also tends to have an issue of extreme violence, especially gun violence,
Hmm.
and excessive drug trafficking. I mean, that's just some common associations that
Yeah.
one has. Slum in Africa is really more a cheap place to live, an affordable
Oh,
place to live. Now, these conditions are not good. The sanitary conditions aren't good. The utilities are not there. The schooling is sparse. So, and the housing is tin and wood cobbled together, and people live cheek to jowl. One guy's wall, interior wall, is another guy's interior wall on the other side. I mean, it
sure.
is absolutely packed. Um, and when I say 300 to 500,000 people, this is not a big city. It's a big city population, but it may only stretch a mile long and maybe a quarter to a half mile wide. And so the density is beyond belief.
So, when you said one of the top five or largest slums on the continent of Africa, that gave me a whole new perspective too, that there are probably a lot of really hard places in Africa all over, but this was one of the biggies. So yeah. So you went down there and tell me what happened after that. You went down
Yeah,
into it.
yeah. Well, as I said, we're on this humanitarian trip. There were about a dozen of us that came along, and at the time in '01, it was too dangerous for foreigners to walk in. And by the way, it doesn't matter whether you're a Black foreigner, a white foreigner, or an Asian foreigner. Everyone there recognizes that you're not from around those parts, and you can't just walk in there. The other thing is, you couldn't drive up to the orphanage because it was impassable. There were no real streets that vehicles could drive on. So what happened is the matron of the orphanage sent boys up, a dozen boys, each to escort one of us, to take us down the hill to the orphanage. And my escort that day was a young man named John. And as I say in the book, he grabbed me as if he'd never let me go. And boy, is that true. So we get down, the troop gets down to the orphanage, and the matron gives us her, welcome and takes us through some formalities. And John and I had started to hit it off already, walking down that slope. And he grabbed me by the sleeve and he said, "Come on, I'm going to give you my own tour."
Oh, nice.
So John takes me to the dormitory where he lived. And I got to tell you, again, things are packed right next to each other, bunk beds right next to each other. In fact, they had to crawl in the ends because there was no aisle between them. And then he took me over to his little chest. It was about 3 cubic feet, a metal chest. All of his worldly possessions were there.
How old was John at the time?
John was 17 at the time.
Okay, young teenager.
He was 17. He was just getting ready to graduate, take his graduate exams from secondary school to get into university or college. So John showed me that. He takes me up to a classroom where they were doing review sessions in preparation for these national exams. And on the board is a diagram of photosynthesis. And this was not just some little, few flowers in the sun. This was a sophisticated chemical diagram of photosynthesis, which I struggled with when I was in high school biology. And here we are in the slums of Africa, and these guys are learning the same sophisticated things.
Yeah, I heard a guy say he ended up becoming an expat in Mexico, took on a family there and all that. But his stepdaughter was taking classes that we'd all fail on. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like the some of the education, and right down below our border is fine education, way more sophisticated than we get in some ways. Ours is simplistic in a way, and he was amazed at that. So you saw a little bit of that.
I did, and actually, it's interesting you mentioned that little tidbit there. They actually posted online some of the exam questions from past years.
Yeah.
And I would struggle with those, just like you were talking about. I mean, this is the real deal, man. And like you're saying, in some ways, it may be even superior to some of the stuff that we have here.
Yeah.
So John takes me around, and we really started hitting it off. And I've started to really grow to like this guy. And we joined back with the group. We had a tour of the rest of the facility, and then it came time to leave after several hours. And he walks me back up the hill, and we got there first, and we were waiting for the others. We were making some small talk, and I finally said, "John, what do you want to be when you grow up?"
Mm.
He looks at me and he says, "I want to be a lawyer." And I thought to myself, child has no parents, no money. He lives in an orphanage in one of the most horrible slums in the world, in an impoverished country, which itself struggles with finance. How is this boy ever going to advance?
Kind of broke your heart then, just to kind of hear that he had this hope.
Oh my God, it's exactly what it did. And here's the thing that really put me over the edge, Doug. He looks up at me and he says, "Please don't ever forget me." Yeah, that still captivates me. It grips me even to this day. 20 years later.
20 years later.
20 years later, it still just it grips me to see this young man pleading to be remembered.
I wonder, have you ever talked to John? Because folks, by the way, John is real, and John is really your adopted son now.
Yes, exactly.
And I wonder how many times he might have said that to other people, or was there, or what did he mean when he said, please don't ever forget me?
Well, I've talked to him about that very thing, Doug. It's funny you mentioned that. Because, you'll hear how the book was written and how it was put together, but I talked to him about that, and he said he had never felt the need or the desire to ever say that to anyone.
Wow.
Because the reason is that we took a personal interest in each other. He said usually when troops of foreigners come down, they stay as a troop. They go through the formalities, they see things, they maybe leave some gifts, what have you, that's fine. But to actually personally engage one-on-one, it had never happened.
Yeah, maybe you were, it was probably who you were to say, yeah, let's go, man. I'd love a private tour, and come on, and he saw that you were willing and you weren't like the rest, and he wanted to show you around. That's probably a little bit of what happened.
I hope so, Doug, but I got to tell you, there's certain relationship magic. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Where you just hit it off and you don't know why, but the vibe is there. And he had never asked anyone to do that because he had never been so, let's just say, close, if you will, even for a few hours.
And that's kind of sad in itself.
It sure is.
Paul, it's like, God, you were with him a few hours, 3 or 4 hours, and he made a connection with you that he hadn't had in his life yet at 17. And that's like, whoa, that's tragic. It's bordering on tragic when we're supposed to have connections with people and that. So keep going. This is interesting.
So again, he had looked up at me and said, "Please don't ever forget me." And again, a gripping moment in my life. And then, Linda took a final picture of the two of us together. And then I boarded the van very uncomfortably because of what had just happened.
Yeah.
And we drove away, and I looked out the back window, and there was John looking down, kind of kicking the ground. And I looked at him, and then traffic parted us. And I didn't see him for 12 years.
Wow.
Now, the intervening 12 years are kind of interesting because that event even though we went and saw other projects, that event with John really inspired me to want to get involved in philanthropic activities. And through a remarkable series of events the next year, a couple of folks from Kenya showed up on our doorstep and were looking to build a children's welfare operation in central Kenya. And Linda was very, very involved in helping to get that organization off the ground. I eventually became chairman of the board of trustees. And so starting in about 2003, roughly, we were very, very involved in philanthropic work in Kenya. And every year we'd go over.
Wow.
And again, eventually I became chairman of the board. We had lots of, strategic meetings, financial analyses and what have you to do. But all that time, Doug, the story of John stayed with me.
Mm-hmm.
It never left me. And I don't want to exactly say it was haunting, but
Mm-hmm.
it just wouldn't let me go. And I told a few friends this story, but I never wanted to cheapen it because it was sacred. It was a sacred moment that young man and I had together. And so, I was inspired to get involved in this work, and Linda and I did a lot of good things, and the team did a lot of good things. But then in 2013, Linda and I were turning 60 years old. And actually, our birthdays are 2 days apart.
Uh-huh.
Now, for the record, I'm 2 days older than her, so she's not a cougar, okay?
That's good.
Just want to make sure.
I had thoughts about that she might.
I just want to make sure about that one. But anyway, we're 2 days apart. And so we together went off to the Quebec woods, found a place there, and just kind of hung out for a week or so and enjoyed a wonderful, important birthday. Well, I love to write, and I'd always written, for school and things like that, but I'd never done any creative writing. And I took that leisurely week as an opportunity to write this story of John, of the one I just recounted, of going to the slums, meeting him, leaving, and the profound words he spoke. And I wrote it and I showed it to Linda, who of course knew the story.
Yeah.
And when she was reading it, or after she was done, I said, I'm really upset because this is bothering me. Here we've done all this stuff, and yes, this event with John has been a huge inspiration, but where the heck is this guy? Did he disappear in the slums? What happened to John? And then a funny little light bulb went off. I got to find him. I've got to find him.
And the hunt is on.
What's that?
And the hunt is on.
The hunt is on. And so here we are. It's August of 13, almost to the day, 12 years after our initial visit. And I had no idea how I was going to do this. I mean, it's a nice pronouncement to say I'm going to try to find this kid, but think about it. Yeah. This is one of the largest slums in Africa. I haven't seen a young man in 12 years. It was too dangerous to go down by yourself. And I don't have, a sponsor, to get me down. What am I going to do?
Or bodyguards, huh?
Yeah, well, or bodyguards, exactly. What in the heck am I going to do? I don't know the name of the matron. I don't even know if they have phones. I don't know anything. So the next month, September of 13, I get a communication from the Children's Welfare Operation, for whom I'm now serving as chairman. And they said, you got to get over here like in a week because there's a huge event we're hosting. And unexpectedly, the governor of the state and the senator from the state have accepted our invitation to speak at this event. And you as chairman have got to be here. So, that's part of the duties. Well, Linda and I talked about it, and I went on this one by myself. The reason I went by myself is we had arranged to bring her sister and two nephews on a trip to Kenya in November. So what didn't make sense on the spur of the moment thing for both of us to go, only spend a week, turn around, and then go back again in November. So I went on my own.
Yeah.
So I arrived at some godforsaken, I was 3:30 in the morning.
Felt good, didn't you?
Pardon?
You felt good, didn't you?
Oh man, but duty called, man. What are you gonna do? Duty called, and so I get out and I finally find a taxi. And actually, in the book, there's a lot of kind of funny things that happen to get this taxi driver. But in any event, I get this taxi driver, and so at this wild hour of the morning, I strike up a conversation with him, ask Martin, the taxi driver, about his life. And he said, well, I'm from Western Kenya, but my parents moved here into Niurobe because my father needed work. It's a very common arrangement where people from the countryside migrate to the city and look in search for cash, the cash economy. I said, yeah, well, Martin, where'd you live? He said, I lived in Mathari. I said, well, wait a minute. Mathari, that's the slum I visited 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Martin, do you know an orphanage called Good Samaritan Children's Home? He said, everyone in Mathari knows Good Samaritan. It's one of the prominent, charities, and it takes so many children off the street.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, Martin, I got to ask this question because there's a young man that I'm trying to get in touch with, and he's about your same age. Do you happen to know a young man about 30 years old called John Maina who grew up in that orphanage? He said, no, I don't. I said, look, I've got to be up country to, the Children's Welfare Organization. It's about a 6-hour drive. I got to be up there tomorrow morning, so I can't go. But do you mind checking out and seeing if he, if you can find anything about him? I mean, just go to the orphanage. Maybe they know something.
Nice.
2-3 days later, I'm up in Meru. My BlackBerry buzzes. It's a message from Martin. I found John Maina.
Cool.
1 month after I said I was going to do this, God knows it happened.
Yeah.
And at least I had, located him. I'm going to now just quickly summarize the rest, but that is the just amazing events that led here, that got me here. What happened then is we did come back in November with my sister-in-law and the nephews, and we did, through Martin, arrange to meet John.
So you didn't, when he told you that he found him, you didn't go see him right then on that trip. You had to get back. So then
I had to get back. I had a ticket that took me back right away, but
yeah.
I was in touch with Martin, who was in touch with John.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the way we actually validated that this was all legit is that photo that Linda took.
Yeah.
I sent to Martin, and John remembered that photo. And he actually told Martin, that's the guy I told never to forget me. Yeah, my friend, you can't make this up.
No.
You can't make this up. So we went and we did reunite in November of 2013, and it wasn't an easy reunion. I mean, this wasn't the birds chirping and rainbows forming and the sun shining. No, I mean, what do you do after 12 years for some young man that you spent 3 hours with?
Yes.
So it was a little uneasy, but then he said, because I explained that we were going to take the relatives along to various parts of the country, and he looked at me and said, hey, can I come with you?
Cool.
And so we took him along, and that's since 2013, John and I have been reunited. Now, let's just talk quickly about the book, and I'll finish,
Well, how about you let me describe it, and then you can go, yeah. No, you got that wrong. I'll just really quickly, I want to give you a rest. You can have some sips of water and stuff. But anyway, folks, this book, Hope and a Future, this book is about John Maina. And John spent tons of time with you, right, Paul, telling you his story. And so this is the story of a street kid in Niurobe, in the slums, and how he survived and how he lived and what he did and who he met and how he earned money, how he made friends, how he sniffed a lot of glue, how he drank a lot of alcohol, how he smoked a lot of ganja, and how he would, to me, Paul, it was like John would kind of rise and then John would fall.
Yeah.
That's just that was kind of a pattern of his. Yes. But your writing made me want to like John because I like John. And your writing, when I first talked to you about this, your writing is very open and you don't pull any punches about John wants a little on the side from his girlfriend and he had to go find a private place kind of thing. Yeah. That's lovely, actually, when you, that's the truth. John John told you how his life was and what he wanted, and how it wouldn't look favorably on the orphanage if he did it there, and all that. So that's my take. It's like there's some great stories in this. I'm just going to tell one that appealed to me. Poor John. There was a time when he had to start making money. He could make some good money by cleaning out sewers, and God only knows what was in those sewers beyond what regularly is in sewers. But John was down there cleaning them out, and when he got out, they gave him some decent money for the time. Yep. But that didn't always last. The money always goes, and so John would arrange to stuff up the pipes himself with milk cartons and plastic milk cartons and jugs and stuff, and then he'd be the savior. He'd go in and clean them out, and make some more money. So that's just street wits, right? Yeah. He just had a lot of street wits, and he probably still does. But that was one of the impactful stories that I loved, because it's humorous, and he just must have told you matter of factly, this is what I did.
Well, that is really one of the great stories, Doug, that you landed on. Let me talk a little bit about how I wrote the book with John, because it actually started where one day Linda sat down with John in the lobby of our hotel and just said, John, tell me about your life. And she is an inveterate note taker. So she was sitting there typing out all of this stuff. And she comes back and shows me this. And it is a story, again, you cannot make it up. And Doug, you talked about going up and coming down. I describe it as a roller coaster existence.
Yeah.
Exactly what it is. But in a very brief word,
sure,
he was thrust onto the street at 5 years old.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
His father was never around. His mother went insane and deserted the home. And so John at 5 and his older brother at 7 took to the streets of this slum and survived in the slum for any number of years, was taken into the orphanage. But then when he graduated from secondary school, was thrust back out onto the streets. And, that in just real brief terms is the bulk of the book.
Yeah.
It's the story from when he was, 3 to 4 years old, when he was in kindergarten, to when he was thrown out, to all the way at the very end when we were reunited when he was about 30. Yeah, it is an unbelievable story.
That kind of surprised me. That was her name Mother Mercy? Mama Mercy?
Mama Mercy is the matron of the orphanage.
Yeah, that was a fascinating name, and her picture is in the book and things like that. Mama Mercy, she had going operation. She sounds like she was an amazing person, but it really surprised me that, how when people go into group homes and stuff, they're in recovery, they usually get a little aftercare, they'll go into a sober house or something, and there was nothing for a graduate of that orphanage to go to. It was just almost like back to it all again. And tell us a little bit. I mentioned the sort of the addiction problem that John had, or he struggled with. That it was just ubiquitous, right? In the street boys, that they would end up using substances and such that got them wrapped around the axle, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. The most common drug that young street boys use, and this is 5, 6, 7, you starting at 5, 6, 7 years old all the way up, is glue. And this is the glue that you use to bind the uppers to soles of shoes. Yeah. And I'm sure we don't do that anymore around here, but in many countries, and if you go into markets in third world countries, you can smell this stuff a mile away. Well, this glue does a couple of things. First of all, it staunches hunger pangs.
Oh, man.
Lord knows there's a lot of hunger pangs for these poor folks. And the second thing it does is it deadens the nerves that allows you better to withstand the cold. Oh. So beyond whatever high you get, there are this ancillary numbing, if you will, that occurs that allows them to survive. Now, the bad news is it rots the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been with street boys who are shot.
Yeah.
Who are just shot.
It's, yeah.
And that's what the youngsters do. Older boys do alcohol. And John was an alcoholic. In fact, he used to take a few hits before he went to secondary school to get him fortified. So, and he used to also, during recess, there was this special route that a couple of the scallywags took to get under the fence and outside the barrier of the school. And they'd take a few hits. And as John said, I'd come back feeling like a gentleman.
So and he even had a career of sorts, working in I want to say bar, but I don't think it's a bar. But he worked in a place that made kanja. What is it?
Well, it's basically hooch. Okay, it's basically hooch is what it is, and
fermented something.
Yeah, it's basically a mash of some kind of a sugar, a yeast, and water. And I actually, let me just back up for a quick minute to tell you how we did the book, and then I'll tell you about going down to the stills. The way we wrote the book is that I had this little handheld recorder that we would take into the slums, because I told John, I want to hear your story. Yeah. But I want us to go to every one of the spots that were evocative in your life. So we went to his home where he lived with his mother before he was busting the streets. We went to the sidewalk where he used to sleep. We went to the little creek where he used to bathe. We went to, just all kinds of different places. And I assembled about 300 audio tracks and transcribed them. And basically the book is a puzzle that I pieced together and put together. Well, the hooch that you're talking about, it's called changa. Changa is the actual name, and changa is basically a still. Is basically still. It looks like water. I don't drink anymore. I don't drink, but I did have a tiny sip of this in one of the bars, and man, this stuff is like 180 proof.
So you actually, I don't know if your readers just want to learn how to make changa. It's all there. It's all there in this book, people. You can learn how to do it. It sounds like it's not that tough. So anyway, just find a beach and a couple of 55-gallon drums, and you're in business, right?
Well, they do it. We have a picture of the still. One of probably the most remarkable places we went was down to the stills, and the stills are right alongside the river because there's a cooling that has to be done to actually make this stuff. And John had to work through a local bartender who is a purveyor of this stuff, because this is highly illegal stuff. She knows all the brewmeisters down at the river, and so she escorted us. And I got to tell you, when this white guy came down, watch out! I got to tell you, what is going on here? And she, held him off. He's fine. I had to pay, let's just say, a nice tip to get some video footage and some photos, but it's the best money I ever spent.
Well, it's funny. It's funny when you say that it's highly illegal, because in the picture it's just like sitting out there, and it's like if the law ever came, all they need to do is kick a few drums around and the operation is over. But that's just my perspective,
Well,
lots of this, right?
Well, since this is a recorded session, I will only say some of those folks you reference are some of the biggest customers.
There you go. Yeah.
Mathare is known throughout Kenya as the home of the best changa in the whole country. So they export the stuff. And
how about
there are any number of officials that partake. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, you another thing I really liked about your book, Paul, is that you develop sort of other characters, not in great depth, but they're pals of John for a while, and his brother Daniel. Is it Daniel? Yeah, his brother Daniel, and they are a few years apart. John's a little younger, right? Daniel had to kind of watch out for John, but they didn't have Daniel was a stepbrother. They
That's
weren't,
correct. Half brother.
yeah, half brother. So yeah, half brother. So they had a thing, you know, where they weren't joined at the hip. They had just some struggles with each other, and but I love the story about, you know, them just once they're on the street, they have to find a place to sleep, and doggone if they didn't find above a lavatory, above a toilet area, that's where they slept. And he showed you that place, am I right?
Yeah, I have a picture of it. Um, when they first took to the street, it was slightly before their mother left them. The mother was very violent, became very violent at the end, and so they would leave in order not to get, hurt.
Yeah.
And so they went to a public lavatory, and there was a very strange feature in that laboratory where, and I've been there. You walk in, and right above the entrance, there's this little 4x4 ceiling. And to this day, it's there. And what John and his brother Daniel used to do is they used to crawl up there and wrap themselves in plastic to keep themselves warm. But the reason that they got there is it was obscure. And also there was a lot of people coming in and out during the night so that they weren't alone.
Yeah.
Kind of a compromised, back corner. They were in a public place. And that was their introduction to the street, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked earlier about what you might want to share, like might be the most impactful thing in the book or in your relationship with John. I'd love to hear something like that. But also, you have favorite passages in the book that you'd be willing to read for us, because for one, it's going to, you wrote it, so it's a beautiful thing. And it's going to let people know the quality of your writing, but also what you bring to your descriptions and things. So I'd love for you to do that. We got time.
Thanks a lot, Doug. I really appreciate it. I'm going, Doug mentioned one prank, which is the prank where you put the bottle up the sewer pipe, let it back up, and then he's got a rod attached to the bottle. He just pulls it out and he makes, he actually makes more than a day laborer makes in 8 days. I mean, he could do this in a half an hour. He could clean a drain. So when he really needed money, this is what he do. And that's one of the pranks. I want to read one other prank.
Sure.
Because, look, it is a gritty existence. There's no question about it. But there's humor here too. I mean, these people are a lot of fun. And they find humor in circumstances that I couldn't tolerate. But this is the very shortest chapter of the book. It's called A Cockroach Buys Dinner.
Yum.
And it's just 2 little pages that I'm going to read. But this is one of John's great pranks. So, A Cockroach Buys Dinner. Now and then, all of us need to treat ourselves to something special. When one is just scraping by, as street boys do, that little bit of luxury can be hard to come by. But just as a little skullduggery earned John a couple of thousand shillings for unblocking sewers, so sheer brass occasionally bought him a good meal. How to do so was virtually a science which John was delighted to teach others. It starts with dressing in your finest clothes and picking the right establishment. A street boy must select a restaurant that's not in his territory so no one will know him. Of course, he doesn't have enough money to pay for a decent meal, perhaps only 60 shillings, that's about 60 cents. Only about 60 shillings, which is already spoken for, 50 for glue and 10 for cigarettes. But that doesn't stop him from walking confidently into a restaurant and taking a seat. Choosing a table must be done carefully. It's best to be in a corner, but close enough to other diners so they can overhear you. There can't be anyone behind you. The other patrons, the waiter, and the cashier must all be in front of you so you can clearly see them. If the seat you need is not available, then be patient until it comes open. After all, you're now a discriminating diner. After you've politely placed your order with the waiter, you call him back and ask for a nice hearty soup. You enjoy your meal slowly, savoring with refinement. As you're finishing your plate, you observe the others nearby to make sure no one is watching. When all is clear, you reach into your pocket, remove a cockroach, which you killed just before entering the premises, and mix it into some of the food left on your plate. Now you summon the waiter and request a glass of water. When he returns, you take another helping of food in which you are sure to include the dead insect. Pause and look up at the waiter to make sure he has witnessed this culinary travesty. Of course, the waiter will be astonished and embarrassed. Now it's time to feign disgust and cause a scene. In a voice just loud enough for nearby tables to hear clearly, but not too dramatically, you emphatically ask, "Is this what you serve here? Cockroaches?" Other guests will naturally turn their heads to see what's going on. At this point, the waiter will do almost anything to keep you calm and your voice low. Most often, he will offer not to charge you for the meal if you leave immediately. To conclude the prank successfully, you comply with the waiter's request, departing with an air of disgust, spiced with a pinch of condescension, just thick enough to mask your inner glee.
That's awesome.
This maneuver is best performed on public holidays when the restaurants offer their finest fare.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. What a prank is right. Eat and run kind of thing. But that's even better than eat and run. It takes more imagination to do what he did. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really something. Doug, I do want to mention one other thing, and I'll read a couple more shorter passages.
Mm-hmm.
I want everyone to know that, I've written the book. I did self-publish under a self-created operation called Little Boost Press.
Mm-hmm.
And Little Boost Press is a not-for-profit organization, 501c3, IRS approved, and the fund's purpose, its motto, is giving vulnerable children a little boost. And we have concluded our first year. We've done about 21 projects to about 10 to 12 different organizations, both in the U.S. and in Kenya. And it's a small operation, but you don't need to have a lot of money, especially when you're working in Kenya, to make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a curious name, Little Boost. And I want to just read you it's the final words of the book, and this is where it comes from, right out of John's mouth. Now, by the time we get to the end of the book, John and I have been reunited. We have already been walking through any number of parts of the slums. We have been working on the book. He's been telling me his story, even some of his very private moments, as you described, Doug. And at the very end of the book, I ask him, "John, have you had a happy life?"
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "I don't think. I know I've had a happy life." And he said, "I've also had a successful life. I have my own business. I don't have to beg. I live my own life. I'm my own boss. I don't have to have a building or a car or a plot of land to be successful." He said, "There are many people in Mathari who had better dreams than me. They wished to be doctors or pilots, and they tried their level best. But no one gave them a boost. That's what most of us need, Dad, just a little boost." And that's where the name of the fund comes from.
That's where the name of the fund comes. So you've actually started a fund.
Absolutely.
Based on what John said.
And
all the proceeds from your sale of these books go to that.
All the proceeds go there. And by the way, if you go to littleboostpress.org, you can see all the projects. They're fully up to date. You see all the stuff we've been doing in the U.S. and in Kenya. Besides book proceeds, there have been any number of generous donors who have just given money.
Yes.
They bought the book too, but way beyond any royalty, they've donated money to it. And we do, if you are interested, we do have a donation button there.
Good.
It's really a cool operation.
We're going to put everything in the notes, Paul. We're going to put everything about how to get to you. How to get to the book, where to find it, where to find your press, and where to find that fund. And your charity, so people will be able to connect with you that way. Really, though, folks, I really want you to do something. Well, you'll really enjoy the book, so that's a promise. You're going to enjoy the book. You're going to make a new friend in Paul, and you're going to make a new friend in John. That's guaranteed. And I'd love to maybe see. We don't want to give this book away. Like, there's lots in it. So, but you are still in touch with John. You talk to him weekly. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, we speak weekly on WhatsApp. Thank God for this great technology. We have a weekly call every Thursday morning, which is Thursday evening for him. And we talk all the time, and we keep in touch on any number of things. I think he's getting close to getting married.
Really?
And, yeah, we're working through that. And since Linda and I are his mother and father, we are mom and dad.
Tell us more about that. I want to hear what there's obviously tradition in Kenya and maybe in Africa itself about strong bonds and
John, after a few years, remember, we've been together now for 8 years. After a few years, he started calling us mom and dad, and to a Westerner, that just sounds really weird. We're so fastidious about bloodlines. This child came from, mom and I, and therefore it's our son or daughter. In Africa, it's not that at all. Kids grow up in villages, and yes, they do have a mother and father, and yes, they do have a place where they bed down every night and mom and dad feeds them, but they have, quote, mom and dad all up and down the street.
Really?
And these other mothers and fathers will be raising those kids and reprimanding them and teaching them. In fact, they also share finances, and when times are tough, share food and things like that. So the whole concept of relationship is very different in Africa than here in the United States. But there's another aspect to this, and this is what I eventually learned, and I'm frankly, Linda and I are quite proud of. We are the only adults who have ever consistently paid attention to John. Mama Mercy did that, but she had literally 200 kids she was raising in the orphanage.
Right.
But we've got one African son. 2 boys of our own, but yeah, it's an amazing thing. And yes, we are very close, and there are tough times. John and I have some disagreements like any parent and child will have, and we work through them, but we trust each other, and we've worked, and part of that is working through some tough times. And yeah,
that's wonderful to hear. And then you make it. Are you continuing your yearly trip to Africa?
Yeah, my wife started an organization called Global Heart Journeys, which takes women to Kenya, and she does this twice a year, February and July, and you get into all of these places. The children's 5 parts of the children's welfare operation. You get into villages, you meet with Nobel Peace Prize nominees, you go meet John, you go to street boy homes, you go to all these places, none of which you can get to on a commercial tour.
Gotcha.
It is all based on our relationships. And she's been covered recently by National Geographic, USA Today, Forbes. It's a magnificent tour. So that's the way in which we are going back. It's kind of in suspension now with COVID.
Yeah.
We're looking to start up again next year.
Okay. Paul, is there anything else you'd like to share? Was there another passage that you thought about sharing? I want to repeat your point from earlier on. Slums are ubiquitous in the world, and 1 in 9, or is it 1 in 8, live in slums. Live in slums on this planet. So it's you will learn a lot in this book about the phenomenon, if you will, how people have to live. And when you were talking about John at the end saying how he's happy, he's had a good life, he's a happy life. I never never picked up from your book that there was a lot of misery and depression and worrying about, and heavy duty worrying that he told you about. He must have felt it, but it makes me wonder. There's a lot of times I hear, you go to places that are much more impoverished. We haven't seen anything like it, but people oftentimes comment about how people are happy, and that just blows people's mind, because there's, we're consumers. We've got all this lovely crap around us and stuff, and we got whatever we want basically, and people that have so little, they can still find a way, because there's nothing to, I don't know, maybe the answer is there's nothing to divert their attention like we have, that just helps them stay within themselves and learn about the important things.
Yeah. In this regard, I just want to mention a sociological study that was done by one of the universities I attended, Johns Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
Hopkins does a thing called the happiness study. They do it every several years. And their latest release of the study said that the happiest continent on Earth is Africa. And I think you put your finger on some of the reasons, Doug. Yeah, it's amazing. I just want to, if I may, switch gears a little bit here.
Sure.
I do want to read one more passage. Maybe this is somewhat serious stuff, but we don't want to make light of this situation. These
right.
are hard. And one of the things that I tried to do, guys, you've kind of touched on it, Doug, but I tried to tell this story without judgment.
Right.
I tried to let the story speak for itself. I mean, you all, apply whatever, filters you choose, but I just told the story, and it was John's story.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's one thing. But here's the implicit message that runs through it. I never state it anywhere, but this to me is one of the really key things that led me to write this book, and that I hope those of you who read it come away with. No matter what your station in life,
mm-hmm.
no matter who you are, you have a gift to give.
Mm-hmm.
And are we going to open our hearts and our minds to listen? And I got to tell you, the lessons I learned from this young man and his life are so profound, of not just perseverance and fortitude and courage, but also the loyalty to his little street buddies as they work their ways through life together. As kids that are, 9, 10, 13 years old on the streets of this slum. Guy, I could not have done this, Doug. I don't think I would have survived.
Right. Talk about resilience. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I do say to some of my friends, if you give me 2 hours to take you through the slums, you will never look at the world the same way.
Wow.
Ever look at the world the same way. And that's what happened to me. And it's not to belittle our lives. It's in no way to belittle what we struggle with, but here is 10% or so of humanity
yeah.
that has to deal with some remarkable things and come away in some ways happy and with character.
Yeah.
We can learn.
Yeah.
And one of the other things I say is, are we impoverishing ourselves by not learning from them?
Oh yeah, I tell you, I'm being like, yeah, agreeing, but it's really people like Mother Teresa. She's one of the ones that said, you may have. She talked about the poverty in the West, and not just poor people in the West, but poverty of the richest people in the West, which is it's character, it's who you are, it's what's important to you. So, hey, this might, well, you know this already, but I've become kind of a friend of John's.
Yes.
What we're attempting to do, listeners and watchers here, we're attempting to bring John into the conversation as soon as possible And so whatever we can do with John, it's going to be tacked on to the end of this video. And John, you're going to be able to meet John, and I'm going to be able to ask him a few questions, and I think it's going to be a delightful thing. He and I have exchanged. We're on WhatsApp now, and I had a chat with him on WhatsApp, and he seems like we're hitting it off. You know, he's a fine young man, and it's exciting. It's exciting for me to talk to him. We have the technology to do it, so I'm really looking forward to that, Paul.
That's great. I appreciate you making that effort. I know you've really worked on that. Technology is sort of working, but not sort of, and so we'll make that happen. And I got to tell you, he is so excited about this, Doug. And again, thank you.
Sure.
May I just close with one final short piece?
Absolutely.
You know, I know I've mentioned along the way that I've spent about 20 years, Linda and I've spent about 20 years working in Africa in various philanthropic ways. And I know many of your listeners have as well. And while there has been some immense joy and satisfaction that I have derived, that Linda's derived, I got to tell you, just personally for me, there's also some really humbling stuff. And I just want to share one reflection that I wrote about in the book towards the end about the life of service. And if I may just close with this, Doug. As I came to learn, the path of service is not without its challenges. When we encounter privation, it is all too easy to look away, to recoil from life's ugliness. There have been embarrassingly too many occasions on which I have walked away. Emotionally closing down feels safe, and I have chosen emotional safety more than I care to admit. I have turned my gaze from human suffering, seeking refuge in spiritual complacency. Fearful of feeling hurt, I have sought the security of mute comfort. But I slowly came to discover that great rewards come from opening one's heart to all of life, its transcendent joys and ubiquitous suffering. Embracing the happenstance of privileged circumstance, along with the casualty of unfortunate birthplace. None of us will ever alleviate the world's suffering, but we can contribute to making it better. And thanks to all of you out there who are contributing to making it better. The challenges are immense.
Beautiful quote. Thank you for sharing that at the end. The book is Hope and a Future, Life, Survival, and Renewal on the Streets of an African Slum. The author is Paul Higdon. And Paul, thank you so much for your time. We're going to get, this will be posted up in a few weeks. And hopefully you get people knocking on your door or emailing you or whatever, and do you think John will ever come to the States to visit you?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I had planned to bring him over in the fall of last year because the book was released late in the spring of last year, and I was going to bring him over in the fall for a book tour where we were going to drive around the U.S. and Canada, and make personal appearances. We got his passport started. We were starting to look at flights, and COVID hit.
It sounds like it's going to happen.
I think it will, Doug.
Yep.
Right now, Kenya's in kind of a rough situation. Of course, borders aren't totally open.
Yeah.
But I think at some point it will.
Will you swing by Augusta, Georgia, Paul?
We are definitely swinging by Augusta, Georgia. That is not a question, my friend.
I want to shake my friend John's hand. I want to shake your hand. So again, Paul, it's been delightful. Hold up your book again and tell us the title.
Most kind. Yeah, Hope in a Future, Life, Survival, and Renewal on the Streets of an African Slum.
Paul Higdon, thank you very much. We'll see you down the road, okay?
Thanks a lot, Doug. Take care.
You bet. You too.
See you later. Bye now.
This is an interlude between my interview with Paul Higdon and another interview we had about a week later, Paul and I, with John Maina himself from Kenya. John brought along a friend, Tom Gikunda, and we shared we just shared pleasantries, and we asked John what he thought about being in the book that is crossing the world right now. And then we spoke to Tom about some really incredibly great work he's doing in the slums of Africa, where John was an orphan child for some time. So enjoy this interview with John Maina and Tom Gikunda. I'm also joined again by Paul Higdon.
This is an addendum to my discussion and bookcast with Paul Higdon. He is the author of Hope and a Future, Life, Survival, and Renewal on the Streets of an African Slum. And we talked last week about his book, and we actually today have really the primary focus of Paul's book, and this is John Maina. And he is with his friend Tom Gikunda in Africa, right here and right now. And I want to welcome you both. John is the subject of Paul's book, and Tom is really some similar, a good connection with John, because Tom is helping the street boys in Africa change their lives, and he's giving them opportunities and helping them solidify their lives and get them off the streets. So, Tom, we may be talking to you a little bit too. So thank you both for joining me. John, what did you think? My first question is, what did you think that when Paul was going to write a book about you?
I was very excited because ever since I was born, I've never thought of either my book will, either my name will appear somewhere in the literature world. So I was very happy, and let me say I was overexcited because it's very rare to hear somebody is being famous in books. Like here we have somebody like Ken Walibora, who have written literature books here that we do learn in secondary. But being that famous, I've never imagined of such a thing to happen to me. So I was overexcited because not even in Kenya, but even abroad, and not even in the US, but let me say in the whole world, because the book will be read by many people in the whole world. I was overexcited, not excited, overexcited.
Well, that's a really great way of describing it, overexcited, because I think you're absolutely right. So few people in the world get to be included in books, and then you're the main focus of Paul's book, and so I could see why you'd be overexcited, because really people worldwide will be reading Paul's book and getting to know you, and you have quite a story. Your story is very interesting. What do you think?
Thank you.
Sure. What do you think people that read the book might want to know about you that may not be in the book? Like something special about you that you'd really like to tell them, maybe how you were and how you are now? What would be something special that people may not know about you?
Yeah, I can say that, my life has been very tough and difficult, and until the time we met with Dad. And I like people to know the experience that, for you, there you don't know what we undergo here, and you don't know the kind of street children we have here and the kind of street children you have in your country. There's a very big gap between us and you. So what the most thing that I would like to know, I would like to impress is that they know that, okay, all of us are human beings because we are created by one God, but there are some challenges here and there that I may like them to know that there are other things, that other lives you have passed a very easy life, but you don't know the hardships. Just hear them and they become like myths to you that you don't even imagine such things can happen. So it's good that once you tell people that this happens, so that they can, in real sense, they can know surely these things happen. So that's.
Yes, I was. I think it's very hard. It was difficult for me to understand that you were a 5-year-old little boy living pretty much on your own and having to figure out how to feed yourself and take care of yourself. It's something that typically doesn't happen in the United States, but you're not completely rare there. It happens to boys quite a bit. Is that right?
Yeah, it happens. Here families, we don't have the families here in Kenya and in the slums. Not all of them goes under the same challenges that I went through. There are some who are left by their parents, both parents. Others maybe their mom or dad dies, and then they're left on their own. And maybe their dad is a drunkard. I do call them a daily drinking officer. So that he is even not concerned with the children at home, not even knowing where they go to school, how they feed. He just comes home very drunk and just sleeps, and the following morning wakes up and goes, not knowing how the children slept, what the children ate. So that's how things are here.
Yeah. Was there a sense of was there a sense of fear when you were little on the streets? Did you have what did you do with your fear, and what did you do with did you have like depression? Like, did you feel like life's unfair to you, or did you just have to work to make it through the day? Did you have any time to think about your situation?
Yes, I had time to think about my situation, because before going to the streets, I used to live with my mom, and after she became, let me say, people say that she became mad, but she wasn't mad. And when I went, the life that I was living with my mom, and now I'm in the streets. And for me to have courage to live on the streets, I had to take the glue, to smoke bang, chew cut, all sorts of drugs, so that all the fear, it's like when you're drunk and you're passing on a very dangerous path, you don't fear anyone, because the drink gives you that courage that no one can fight you, no one can stop you on the way. So I just took the drugs and all those drugs, so that I can have that courage. But I still had sense that, oh, this is not this is not where I'm supposed to be, because here I'm sleeping in polythene papers, I'm sleeping in sacks, covering myself with sacks and papers and sniffing glue inside. And flashing back is that I used to sleep on a very good mattress, a very good pillow, covering myself with a very heavy blanket. Now here I am. So just to forget all those things when I was with my parents. That's the reason that I started taking the drugs.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That it sounds like what people do all over the world when they have a hard, difficult things in their life, that they don't know how to cope any other way except to help them forget their situation. And that's what you're telling us here, right?
That's what I was wanted to mean. When you take the drugs, they don't take you back where you are. They just take you at the present situation where you are currently and where you're going. So after taking the drugs, all that I could think of, mostly I could not think where I was coming, how I used to live with my parents, or how I used to live when I was with my mom. I only focused on what shall I eat, where shall I get the money to get the drugs, and how shall I sleep, after maybe other boys who bigger than us, when they came on where we used to sleep, when they start harassing us, how shall I react? But at that time, I was under this, I was under drugs, so I could not think of where I came from. I'm just thinking of the present situation that I am in and forgetting the past. So because if I do remember, if I remember of the past, then I won't focus. I won't even concentrate on maybe other guys may come who are bigger than me and start snatching my gun, pickpocketing me when I'm asleep. So I used the drugs. Those drugs used to make me not forget just the past. But when I had not taken the drugs, I used to sit down and now start flashing back. This is not the kind of life that things.
Yes.
Yeah.
It helped you forget.
Yeah.
Tell me about you beginning to call Paul your dad and his wife your mom. Tell me what that means. Tell me what that means to you and what it means to you in your culture to begin calling another person your mom and your dad. Tell me what that means to you.
Okay. In Good Samaritan, when I was in Good Samaritan, the Maswangesh who took care of who owned the orphanage used to call her aunt, and because because she was the one who was feeding us, taking care of us, but we did not call her mom, and her husband did not call her dad. And before I came to Good Samaritan, in the book, I had so many dads that here in Kenya, whoever is taking care of you, whether maybe he is your stepdad or whoever he is, whoever is bringing you to home a sugar or a bread or anything that you just get to eat in your, maybe she gives your mom, that is your dad. So for me, I called him dad because in Good Samaritan I used to call my mom, but dad, what he did it for me, because you see, even if you're separated with your child for almost 10 years, at long last, even if he comes, you won't call him, even if he had other parents there, other people who are taking care of her, he or she won't call them his parents. He'll call you because you've been separated for many years and such that you've not been seeing each other. And I decided, because that, what he has done to me and how he has come looking for me, it's like in the Bible we are being told that when one sheep is lost, the owner leaves the 99 and goes looking for the one that is lost. Meaning that the 99 are not of more important, but the one that is of most important. So I saw that this is my real dad, because if he has come just to look for me all the way, and in my mind, having in mind that he has not come by foot, he has paid the air ticket, wasted his time to come and just looking for me. Somebody who doesn't, not that he was coming look for me to give him a job or to give him money or to give him anything, but because of the love that was in his heart and how he felt in his heart, that's when he came looking for me. And I said, no, even my mother should not be called my mom. Linda should be called my mom, because they've come all the way from America. It's not 10 miles or 100 miles. It's almost beyond 1,000 miles looking for me and said, oh, those are my real parents.
The
reason being, from there again, you see, when dad came looking for me, I wasn't in Good Samaritan. I was living on my own. I have survived. I have done all sort of things, stealing, all those sort of things, bad things, and now here they are. They've come for me. Meaning, even if your child, how bad he is, you must go look for him. Meaning, the love that he had for me was a parental love. Although he is not my biological dad, but he acts like my biological dad. That's the reason I decided to be calling him dad and mom. Because what they've done for me, and at the time they came, I wasn't in Good Samaritan. And from the time they came, my life really changed, because all what I was doing, just stopped doing all of them. And that's it.
Well, it sounds to me like you, when your dad came back for you, came back looking for you, it sounds to me like you just felt a tremendous esteem, like your self-worth grew, and your love for your dad grew because he came for you. And that's the way you saw it, that it was amazingly special for you that someone would come for John Maina and want to see you so much.
That's true. And
I'm going to bring your dad into this. And Paul, tell me about what has it been like to know John and to be called his father, and to actually take on the role of being John's father when he actually is a young man, when you see him again. Tell me what that means to you and how it feels.
Yeah. Well, children are one of the great blessings of anyone's lives. And John is one of the great blessings of our lives. And it doesn't matter whether we're biologically related, that's irrelevant. This young man is one of God's precious creatures, and I can't tell you how deeply it means to Linda and me to have him as a son, to call him a son. We have two of our own sons, but John is a special son, and it means the world, Doug. It means the world. Yeah.
That's so nice to hear. Hey, John, tell me about, I know that at the end of the book, you have a job. You actually have your own business, and you make a living through your business. And do you have any, you are how old now, John?
What? Right now?
How old? How old?
Right now, I'm 37 years old.
Okay. So, God willing, God willing, you have many years to live. So, do you have any?
Yeah,
do you have any new ambitions for your life beyond what you're doing now? Is there a dream that you still hold at your age that you think you can achieve?
Yeah, I do.
What is that?
In fact, we had talked with Dad, and I have a dream of owning my own land, which we had talked with Dad. And the first thing that I would like, in my dream, the first thing after owning land, the first thing I would like to do is, even if I just said, I've told Dad several times that after I own my own land, I'll make sure to give back a hand to like what Dad has done for me. I must make sure I'll just have any child that doesn't have parents. Any child that I don't know, I can take him and take care of him. God bless you if I'll be financially stable. Take care of him, just to give hand to Dad, to just like saying thank you to Dad, because what he has done to me, it's not only for me alone. I must give a hand back, give a hand so that even God can bless me. Because what Dad has done for me, who am I not to, when I'm financially, who am I not to give another hand to a less privileged person? I promise myself that's one thing that I must do. Even if I won't have many children, I would only take one that I'll take care of him until he is well enough to stand for himself.
Yes, that's wonderful to hear that that's your ambition. Your ambition in the United States, we think ambition is to go out and make more of yourself or make more money or get a better job. That's how we view ambition here. And you view ambition as helping another person. That's your ambition. And that's a beautiful thing for me to hear, because it's so different than the way we view ambition.
Yeah, I said that because I'll want to give back hand, even if I won't, because sincerely speaking, I don't know how I can repay Dad. Even if I have 1 million shillings in my bank, in my account, I don't think how I can repay Dad. So the only thing to repay him is just do good to others, like he did good to me. Because if I start counting what he has done for me, and if I'm told today you don't, John, then now you can repay Dad, I don't think how I can pay it. So. And that's why I just say it's only God who can bless him. And for me to repay him, I'll just repay him by doing good to others like he has done to me. That's what I've been praying.
Well, I want to be able to hear that that ambition and dream comes true for you sooner or later. And it's just a beautifully generous it's a beautifully generous ambition to have to help another person like you've been helped. that's the way the world works. That's the way the world
Yeah.
works best. Paul, do you have anything to say about
Yeah.
John's ambition?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Doug, that is the most magnificent way of being repaid. You know, parents always make sacrifices for their children. That is the way of the world. And I could never repay my parents for the opportunities they gave me. And I would never expect a repayment in any way back to me.
Mm-hmm.
What John is saying is so magnificent, to just basically pass it on, whatever inspiration I've given John, or whatever John and I have been able to do together. For him to do that for another child, doesn't get any better than that. Absolutely.
It sure doesn't. Well, John, we're going to have to wrap it up. I would love to talk with you all day and all night, because you're a wonderful man, and I really appreciate the time you gave us. I promised Tom. Is Tom still sitting next to you?
Tom, yes.
Yeah. Well, John, there he is. John, let me thank you again personally for being on this interview. It's been a delight, and we'll sign off together in just a second. But I do want to bring Tom into the conversation. And Tom, you help young men that are street boys, and you bring them in. Is it almost like an orphanage setting, also, like John was in with Good Samaritan, or is it something different?
It's similar, but with different systems and structures. We normally deal with former street boys, and what happens is that we will take care of the boys from a young age, as young as 5 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and we will work with the boys until they are past their high school. We will take them for college or vocational training, and they will do their courses. That is what they are planning, or what they are dreaming of, and we will make sure they are going to their colleges and they do their courses, and after their courses, we will try and help them secure probably a job or something. But we will not let them exit the house until they are stable. We take it as a responsibility, because there's no need of providing for them, and then at the last moment when they really need you, then you give them back to the streets. It doesn't make any help at all. So we will make sure they are stable, they are working, they've got a fallback plan. And thanks to Paul and the friends around Paul that have been able to come through and pay for college courses for these boys, and some of them are already in their industry attachments, working with good companies. So we make sure that the boy has somewhere to step on, and he has a future. So it's a lot of work, but it's worth. I mean, the results are just amazing. You're just satisfied and fulfilled when you see a street boy life is changing, and he's taking care of himself. He's paying bills for his probably younger brothers and all that. So that's where the satisfaction is. It's not just the beginning, but the end is where you just feel fulfilled.
That's wonderful.
Doug, can I jump in for just a moment,
Please?
This is that okay, Doug? Yeah, Tom is a very modest man. The work that this young man is doing, and it is no exaggeration, this is the work of God.
Mm.
If you've read the book, you realize, Doug, how the dissolute street life these children lead. It is unbelievable. And what Tom does is he takes these kids off the street, and it's not like just, hey, come on, let me invite you in. It takes months to build the trust, to bring these boys in. And then once they're there, they're not cured right away. Many of them are strung out on glue, as John had mentioned before. They have to be detoxified. This takes months, if not in fact a year, to get these children simply stable enough to attend schools. And Tom has done this with 36 or more young men, and it is an unbelievable job. And my heart is with these boys. I wrote a book, yes, about John's life, but I want to say something about Tom's operation, Hope House or Hope Center. I think I mentioned in our prior interview together, Doug, that all of the proceeds from the book, plus a lot of donations that come in, all go to help vulnerable children. Well, my board is working with Tom, and we are probably going to elevate Hope House as the premier recipient of the beneficence of our donors. And Tom and I have been working through the week on a financial plan, and this young man deserves all the support. And so if anyone is at all interested, Doug, I think you're going to be putting links in your program notes. Little Boost Children's Fund is our fund. Everything goes to it. And Tom and the Hope House is one of the principal recipients of aid. And my God, there is hardly anyone that deserves it more. Great work, Tom, buddy. We got a lot more great things to do together, friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul.
Tom, let me just ask you really quickly. Tell me what was the deep motivation for you to get started with this work?
My motivation is a strange one. You might find it strange, but I think it's okay to share it. When I was in high school, I was a very big bully. I used to bully everybody because I was able to control the gangs in school. So I used to bully, and everybody feared me because I would really terrify everybody around me. And I was so much feared that if you came to our high school, you needed to know me or my gang so as to survive in that high school.
Wow.
So even the teachers would negotiate with me to have a good time in school. So it happened that there was this young man that I really bullied a lot, and I terrified his life to a point that he ran away from school and he walked all the way home because he was afraid. And he went and told the mom that I'm done with high school. If that is high school, and if that is what somebody goes through, I'm done with it, and that's the end of it. So the mom brought the young boy back to school, and I was called to the office by the principal and some teachers and board members. And when I entered the office, you could see even the boy was still afraid of me as much as there were teachers around. And the mom was the one that touched my heart. She just told a story of how she's a single mom. She has struggled with this boy. This is one of the good high schools, the best high schools in the region. And so getting the boy there to that high school was a struggle for her. And this is the only boy. That is her hope. That is her future. And what I was doing, I was destroying everything she has been living up to. So it just hit me there and then when I saw the tears from the mom and the boy. I mean, what was I doing? Yes, I'm privileged. I'm coming from a church family where I can get what I want, but am I destroying somebody's future? So it just hit me. And from that conversation, looking at the mom's face and everybody around in the office, it changed me completely because I just felt the shivers and wait a minute, what am I doing to this family? And through the conversations that we had there during all that time, it changed me completely. And from becoming the biggest bully, now I became the biggest defender of anybody that was coming to that high school. So I was taking care of these young boys that were afraid. So I became the person that now you needed to know me to survive well in school. So I used my influence to take care of all the boys that were being bullied. And from that is where my heart changed. And I became that guy that was there for everybody in school, all the new boys that were coming in, because I was in charge of the gangs. So I used my influence to make sure that everybody now was comfortable in school. And from that point, that is when even I finished school, I took it to my dad and I started dealing with the street boys immediately. I decided I would rather just spend the day trying to understand these people, what they are going through, because already I put somebody through the same thing for almost 2 years. So I understood how you can destroy somebody's life, thinking you're making yourself relevant. So I used my influence even out in the streets, and that is where it touched me. And whatever I was planning to do, I never did it actually. I never even told Paul this, but my actual course that I was going to do in college was aeronautical engineering. Mm-hmm. But I never did that. It just became not relevant anymore. So my life was just given it to helping out. So I did a course that would not require much of my time or much of my thinking and all that. So that is where my heart changed. And since then, I'm always there for people that are less fortunate, young boys that cannot do this, cannot afford this. And the satisfaction is just amazing, man. It's just amazing.
Well, I've never, honestly, I don't think I've seen in my life, two men that are living their lives, and two men more beautiful to me, that you give of your life and you give of your heart, and your heart's in the right place. And like Paul said, Tom, I will definitely be putting information about your work, so people that watch this can have a concrete way to help you and help those boys. And I think we got to wrap up here, but this has been thrilling for me. It's been educational. To John, I get to see your face after reading about your life. It's just all been a tremendous experience for me. And I really want to thank you for what you shared today. And I just wish you happiness and continued great life for yourselves. And John, I bet you Tom could use you at his ministry. And I think there's opportunities for you to help Tom. I'm certain. And you might find that boy there. You might find that boy whose father you will become eventually. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm gonna turn off the recording now, and God bless you both. And it's been a delight. It's been a privilege to speak to you. Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say thanks, guys. Yeah, it's again been a blessing in my life to know both of you. We've got a lot more things to do together, fellas. You know that. I ain't going anywhere. We're going to be together for a long time, whether you like it or not. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
And Mr. Doug, let this not be the last. Let this not be the last, but another time we can. Whenever you need us, we are very free for you.
Thank you.
I'm ready for you.
I'm privileged to be your friend, John. I'm privileged to be your friend, Tom. And you have my email now. So let's continue our friendship. And Paul, you wanted to say one more thing?
No, I'm fine. Again, guys, thanks a lot. We've got a lot of work to do together. Tom, I'll be talking to you, and John, I'll be talking to you guys very soon, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
And that is a wrap. That's a wrap for the first season of the Defined Engagement Bookcast. A little look back on the books and the authors that we spoke to in this season. And we're going to take a little hiatus over the summer, but we'll be back in the fall. So we talked to Ted McLyman, Common Sense Guide to Financial Security, Devin Halliday, Belonging Factor, how great brands and great companies, have great people, great leaders. Trish Tagley wrote, Everyone Knows You Suck. Then we had Laura Zukorikoff, It's Not Them, It's You. Why Employees Break Up with Their Managers and What to Do About It. Lori Rudiman, Betting on You, How to Put Yourself First and Finally Take Control of Your Career. And then Teresa O'Kane, Safari Gemma, a story about love and a journey of friendship on the continent of Africa. Then we spoke with Tracy Maylett, the CEO of DecisionWise, about his 2 books, Engagement Magic and The Employee Experience. Last but not least, we spoke to the great Tom Peters. Tom Peters is the Red Bull of management thinkers. He and I had a wonderful exchange, and we talked about his last and latest book, Excellence Now, Extreme Humanism. Finally, Shane Metcalf may not be a published author yet, but he is an author of a company as the Chief Culture Officer at 15.5. He was a great addition to the season, and I'd love for you all to consider watching and listening to more of these bookcasts at www.anchor.fm/Doug-Fine. And if you'd like to go over to my website and see the kinds of things that I do for companies to engage their people, improve their management, and overall just build a better company for the people that work there, both management and employees. That's www.dougjfine.com. Thank you again for this season and joining me on the Defined Engagement Bookcast. And we will see you in the fall of 2021. And have a great summer. Bye-bye for now.